So yes, welcome everybody to this this interview, Meet the Author, with Sarah, best-selling author of Stop, which is, well, we're going to find out more about what it is right now. So can I just have a show of hands if you've already got the book? Yay. And have you read the book or parts of it? Excellent. Great. So you already know, but for those of you who don't know, this book is all about how to avoid burnout in your life. So I'm going to ask you first, Sarah, what prompted you to write the book?
Well, that's an interesting question because I wasn't expecting to write a book. But I did go on a public speaker training course about 5 years ago, so I could speak at my mother's 80th birthday party. But the course that I went on, which is called Public Speaker University, highly recommend it. It's a 4-day course, and Andy Harrington is the guy who runs it, and he gets you to put all the stuff that's in your head into a model so you can talk about it. So I did that, and then as a consequence, I ran a very, very tiny seminar at home. It's only 12 people, 6 people I knew and 6 people I didn't know. And off the back of that very first seminar, talking about my model, what I do with my clients day in, day out, I got a book writing contract from Capstone Wiley, which I thought was just extraordinary. And then I got invited to speak at Citigroup to run a webinar for them, and 1,100 people turned up. And I thought, oh my goodness, this topic is so relevant and needed. So I was delighted that after that webinar, I found out that 94% of those people who attended had implemented something. And that's what it's all about for me. So that's the reason I started writing the book. But boy, if I'd only had that book when I was mid-30s working too hard, it would have been my wake-up call, but it would also be my savior. So I kind of written it for me, for my younger self.
Yes. And do you want to share with people who might not know why that subject is, why you're so passionate about that subject?
Yes, because I think one of the things that has become so evident for me, and I know there are other people on this call who've also experienced firsthand what it's like to work in these crazy fast environments. I didn't realize what I was doing to myself. I'm a bright person. I'm really good at what I do. And I actually did physiology and biochemistry at university. So you'd have thought I'd have understood something about the body, but I had no concept of what chronic stress, which is what I was experiencing and what many people are experiencing these days, was doing to me. And it's a very insidious thing, so it creeps up really slowly. But when you're in this chronic state most of the time, and most people are, all your other things shut down, like your reproduction system shuts down, your digestive system shuts down, your ability to have cognitive function like you used to shuts down. All these systems are not designed to function when you've got chronic stress. We're there just to get out of that trouble, to fight, flight, or freeze, so we don't get eaten by a bear. But if you're in that state for year in, year out, as I was, then there are huge consequences. And not only was I not able to conceive the children I wanted, my marriage broke down, and there's whole sorts of other things that happened as a consequence of me not knowing. So I'm really passionate that people know, and then they've got a choice. So that's one of the reasons that I'm really feel very strongly about this topic. And we've got much more chronic stress going on these days than we've ever had before. Welcome, Simon.
It's true. That is true.
Hi. Apologies
Hi.
for being late, Sarah. How are you doing?
Nice to see you.
Hi, John.
So there's been a few people have sent questions through in advance of today, Sarah. I don't know if you've seen them, but let me just pick on a couple of these. Alison asked,
Carol, one of the things that the people, many people probably don't appreciate, although it's much more in the public domain these days. But what is it? What are we talking about when we're talking about burnout? I've talked about the consequences, but the World Health Organization has now defined it as a syndrome where we are exhausted. That would be one of the criteria. We are disconnected from our lives and our work, perhaps. And in addition to that, we have this reduction in our ability to be efficient at work. and it's a syndrome connected to work-related stress in particular. And it's much more, what's the right word? It's much more familiar these days than ever before. And I don't know whether anyone was listening to Radio 4 this morning, but it actually mentioned that the number of people presenting at the doctors now with burnout and mild depression has significantly increased in the last, I guess, recent period, because we're talking about the pandemic period. And the NICE has actually recommended that they don't automatically get medication, which is a good thing, but they get talking therapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy, and what they called group exercise. I don't know whether that means a physical exercise or whether you do things as a group, counselling perhaps. But either way, I thought that was a really interesting thing, that actually they are going to be recommending non-medical routes for solutions to this mild depression, which is what this book is all about. It's giving people tools and tactics that they can use. I do worry slightly, and maybe other people have got an opinion on this too, but I worry slightly that are there enough cognitive behavioral therapists out there? I know it's really hard to get the support. So great idea from NICE, but I wonder how practical it is.
Yeah, I did see that, and I thought it was interesting. And I was only talking about this the other day with one of my, peers. Younger people on this call may not ever have experienced this, but in the old days, when I used to go on holiday with my husband, we would tell my mother where we were going, the resort, the hotel name, whatever. And when we got there, we would ring and say, right, we're here, we're safe. And then that was it for 2 weeks. There was no mobile phones, there was no laptop you could take with you. You literally did switch off. And I remember very physically around the 3rd or 4th day of being on holiday, feeling my body relax. Suddenly I was like, right, now I'm on holiday. But it would take 3 or 4 days for that to happen. That we never have that time now, because the laptop or the phone is always with us wherever we are. We never get that 3 or 4 days clear of any demands from anybody, and which allows the body then to relax. What do you have?
I would agree with that, and I think the younger generation that are coming through now have never had that experience. And they are continuously on. My 16-year-old son is a fine example. From the moment he wakes up in the morning to the moment he goes to bed, his phone is attached. He takes it to the bathroom. He cooks his breakfast with it beside him. He's continuously watching a movie or YouTube clip or something going on. So he's consistently getting this stimulus. And so they don't have this concept of what it's like to actually switch off. And Bupa did a piece of research that was published in October with City Mental Health Alliance, and 60% of young professionals, and that's people in the first 4 years of their career, have already burnt out at one stage in their career in the first 4 years. I mean, that is just shocking. And I think it was something like 72% had poor mental health in the last year. So we have a significant problem on our hands. So one thing is awareness and understanding about what's going on, and then is knowing what to do. So that's, again, what the book is all about, new tools and tactics that you can do. It's
really prevalent. And do you think it's more prevalent now because of the pandemic, or less? Do you think that's helped or hindered?
I personally think it's hindered. I think, but that wouldn't necessarily be the same for everybody, because I think some people very much like working from home. Other people really are finding it difficult. So it's not a one thing fits all. However, just about the statistics of more people presenting to the doctor tells me that it's more of a problem for more people than it has been. I certainly have found it much more challenging. The holidays that I used to be able to take more than 2 years ago, I haven't had. I've done my best to take breaks, but even so, I didn't come back feeling refreshed like I used to. So I know that I'm much more sensitive. I find it really difficult to maintain my mood recently. The darker months really don't help me. So absolutely it is, I found personally more challenging, but I see others doing the same, and many more people.
I think it is, even if you enjoy working from home, and I do. I've run businesses for 20 years, and this particular business I've run from home for the last 6 years, previously having big offices and all the rest of it. So I personally like it, but it is harder to switch off because you don't have any separation from work to home life. It's just all one. big mismatch.
Out of interest, how many people on this call are working from home predominantly? I think that's 100% actually. And as you're right, it's much more difficult to switch off. And the incidence of burnout, I think it's between 5 and 6 times more likely to happen if you're an entrepreneur. So again, somebody perhaps who doesn't have the same boundaries of the 9 to 5 or the 8 to 6, if only it was 9 to 5. So yes, it is a potentially real problem, and I think we're going to have another tsunami coming through that's going to be mental ill health, another pandemic.
I think you're probably right. Welcome, Mikhail. Nice to see you on the call. If you've got a camera, please do turn it on if you can, so we can see you. If you can't, don't worry. So I'm going to go back to a couple of questions that came through prior to today. And I'm going to start with Allisons, which is kind of a two-part question. So I'm going to start with part one, which is, Sarah, what do you see as the biggest effect of the pandemic on resilience?
Well, it's a big question. Thanks for the question, Alison. But what I've noticed is a couple of things. We are weary now. I just talked about my own personal weariness. We are definitely more weary than we've ever been. And the thing about where we are right now, we don't really have an end in sight. Would you agree? That actually, although we've gone a long way and we've got vaccinated and we've got our boosters coming through, we still don't know if we're out of the woods yet. So I think that's giving everybody a sense of anxiety. Some people have had anxiety all the way through about their own health, about the health of their loved ones, about their livelihoods, about their finances. We've had a lot of anxiety for a long period of time, and we're all picking that up, whether we like it or not. We're all picking up this low level of anxiety or even higher levels of anxiety that are going on around us. So I think there's a sense of we are all stressed and we haven't been able to relax and reduce the levels of stress hormones as we would like. But combined with that, this idea of it's not over yet. How long have we got to keep going? We just don't know. And I just find that thought personally is rather daunting. How long have we got to keep this up? I don't believe life will ever be the same. So I think that's what the pandemic, I think, has had a real impact. But I'd be welcome to other people making comments about what they also think has had an impact, the pandemic, on resilience in particular. If anybody wants to unmute and contribute, they'd be welcome.
Yeah, you've got your hand up. Was that on purpose?
Who's this? Who's got the hand up?
Kerr?
Kerr.
Yes. Did you want to speak, or was it an accident?
You're on mute still, but
yeah, I didn't know. I hadn't consciously put my hand up, but
but now you have.
Do you have an opinion on what Sarah just said?
I think it's like a lot of these sort of environmental macro situations. It can bring out unexpected good things for some people. It can bring out unexpected challenges and difficult things for other people. And my curiosity is about, okay, how is it that some people actually seem to thrive more under these sort of challenges? How can what they do be shared with the people who are finding it difficult?
Yes, well, I believe, Kerr, that those people who are able to cope more effectively do understand how their bodies work, and they do go out of their way to bring down those stress hormones wherever they can, whether it's during the day or whether it's breaks, or whether it's time out, or whether it's sport, or whether it's meditation, or whether it's focusing on sleep. They're much more conscious, I believe. The ones who are thriving in this environment are much more conscious about, okay, how can I be my best? They may not be able to use the same words as I will use, and there aren't any right words, but nonetheless, I believe their actions would be doing just that, bringing down these stress hormones often. That's what I believe.
I think that's true. Resilience it's such an important skill to have, or quality to have, and I think it's not something that we teach our younger generation.
No,
to be resilient.
well, certainly. I was delighted to see that my son had been taught meditation at school and was practicing it to go to sleep.
That's amazing.
Well, boy, I think that's pretty impressive. Certainly impressive, and he certainly, much as I do it, and I have talked to him about doing it with me, he's never been interested.
Well, it's mum, so it's not the same, is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you get told it at school, it's actually real, you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So the second part of Alison's question, I welcome Ellen as well. Hello. If you do have a camera, do please put it on if you can. Ellen Humphreys. So let me just find the second part of Alison's question, which was, what's the single most effective thing that we need to focus on going forwards? And I'm guessing this is in relation to resilience, which was the first part of the question.
Again, it's a very big question and a tough call to do one thing, but I did give it some thought, and I came to the conclusion that the biggest thing that we can do is to be kind to others and give them, you know, some leeway, the benefit of the doubt. If we can alleviate their stress and workload, then let's do that. If we can do a gesture of goodwill, let's do that too. But that kindness, of course, isn't just for other people, it is also for us. What can we do to be kind to ourselves? You know, what can you just take off that to-do list? Maybe just let it go. How could you be kind to yourself today? You know, what could you do just to give yourself a little bit more leeway? So I think kindness would go a long way. Recognizing, you know, we're human beings after all, not human doings, because that's what we're asking everyone to do. Just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And we're not machines. You know, at some point something will give. So if we can be kind to ourselves and to others, that would be where I think would be a good place to start.
Really good point.
Alison, have you got an idea of what you think would work also?
No, I think I agree with everything you said, Sarah, but interesting about resilience is that actually working with some of my clients now, the word resilience is coming up in job descriptions, that they're actually asking people to be able to demonstrate that they are resilient. And I think it's this whole ability to be able to adapt and to be flexible and to be able to demonstrate that they can deal with change. And I think, you know, anything that we can do to help people understand how that they do that, I totally agree with the self-care. Self-care is a massive part of resilience. I think, you know, I think it is a priority that we look at, and so I would definitely agree with that.
I don't, and it's, of course, I think you're right, and it's interesting that people are having to demonstrate that they are resilient. Well, of course, we can all demonstrate that we're resilient when we're on form, aren't we? That's what we do. We are resilient when we're on form. It's just when we're not on form. So we get put into an environment, and I know some people on this call have been in those environments like I have, which don't lend itself to supporting you to remain resilient. Then it's an interesting challenge, isn't it? Which one maybe we could turn back to the employer. How can you demonstrate it's a mentally healthy place to work? How could you do that?
Yeah.
Romla.
Oh, yes, Mama's got her hands up just behind her. Might need to unmute yourself.
There we go. Hello. Congratulations, Sarah, first of all, on your book. Fantastic. I dip in and out and I take from it bits, just in small bite size, because that's the way I am, and I just think I'll absorb more or just get the benefit of your words. So congratulations, first of all. Talking about employer, you just hit the subject I was going to ask you. As an employer, my husband and I, we're directors of a healthcare company. So just wanted to understand or get some words from yourself as to what do you feel would be the most powerful thing that we could do as employers, responsible employers, which we are, to ensure our employees stop and can stop. Now, these are people who actually are kind and they deliver acts of great kindness and care out into the community, frontline. It's a busy day for them, and obviously we do things like give them a days off, etc. But is there anything else that comes to your mind that maybe we should focus on? Maybe one or two things that would also help our workforce, and then I'll probably apply it to myself.
Thank you for the question, Ramona. Another big question, really. You know, to me, it's all about how you can bring down the the idea of any sort of threat. So a tight deadline, a too much to do, too much workload, for example, lack of communication can be seen as threatening because people don't know where they are. So any way that you can create certainty for that person. So really good communication about what's going on and when it's going on, and you know, the what ifs. Autonomy over their jobs. Do they have autonomy? Can they get on and do what they need to do in a within their remit, of course. Yes. So I think that also helps. So those are the things that immediately come to mind. What comes up for you as you think about that very question?
I think the certainty part is obviously a valued part, because they need to have direction and know. I think also I'm very aware that as frontline staff, they need praise, and that's something that apparently goes a very long way. Just the thank you for doing the little things. So that's something we focus on, make sure they're recognised. And it's not all about the monetary rewards, it's about that recognition. So yeah, it's that, and making sure that they don't feel there's a them and us culture within our organisation, meaning management and, you know, non-management. So we always have a virtual team hug and so forth. So, you know, try and keep me. But I just wondered if there was anything. But it's interesting your point about certainty.
Well, so I think that's what that brings out the stress hormones. So the chronic stress response is when the people are feeling uncertain and unsure.
Sure.
So actually, any ways that you can give them certainty. And it sounds like you're doing a great job already.
Like we try.
Thank you for the question.
Yes, great question. I'm going to come to, is it Lila? Is that how you pronounce it? Next. Yeah.
Layla, thank you.
Layla, sorry.
And Layla is very much part of bringing this book into the world. She's been a fantastic publisher for me. So yes. Thank you.
And you had a question, which was, I had it in my head and then it's gone out of my head. What? Here it is. What's your go-to when things feel too much? That was Layla's question.
My go-to every single time is sleep. You know, if I haven't slept well, my whole world starts to feel
unmanageable. Yeah.
I can't cope. I don't have the resilience. I seem to have a very short fuse. When I was much younger, I seem to be able to sacrifice my sleep and still be pretty resilient. Since I burnt out, I do not have that capability. So as soon as I start getting tired, I get wobbly, and all sorts of other things start to happen. I become oversensitive. My gremlins start to play with me. You know, all sorts of different aspects that reduce my ability to thrive. So sleep is definitely the go-to number one. But after that, it's moving. So metabolizing the stress hormones, I now know that's what it's doing, but back then I didn't. But so moving, so it could be dancing, walking, tennis, anything that actually gets my body moving. Stretching in the morning would be another one. And then company. I'm an extrovert and I need company. So I'm choosing my company carefully to actually be a radiator, not a drain. Somebody that brings me joy and energy would be another place. And I know that's not one go-to strategy, Layla, but there's a few there. But we're all different, aren't we? And I suspect everyone has got different go-to strategies. Feel free to contribute if you'd like to.
I'm with you, Sarah. Sleep is definitely mine. Definitely.
Romola's got her hand
Romola,
up.
yes. Oh,
mute
you're
again.
on mute again.
We've got the hands, but we haven't got the. There you go.
There you go. Sorry, I'm trying to work out on my computer how to actually unmute. There's no single click. Anyway, so I once, when I was also, going through something a little bit, say, traumatic, someone once said to me, and it's the words I always remember, and I wonder if it applies to you, which was just surround yourselves with positive stuff, music, people, activities. And I just wonder whether music plays a part in one of your other sort of positive music, or I suppose sometimes we feel a bit melancholy, but I suppose, but on the whole.
Yes, I have to say I've really increased my music quotient during the pandemic. I now have loads of Spotify playlists I go to, and my niece very, very sweetly said, "Oh, Sarah, you have such an eclectic interest in different music." And I really do find that actually the music does bring out a different mood in me, and I can really increase my energy, and I start moving again. So I can't keep still when there's some good music going on. So music is definitely one, and meditation and breathing are other ones that really make a difference to me. If I don't meditate, I know about it. Of course, if I don't breathe, I would really know about it. Well, you would, but I wouldn't. But what I'm meaning by the breathing is the sort of really good, deep breathing and allowing myself to relax each time. So again, those are the other things that come to mind.
There was a really interesting question from Stephanie. I don't think she's not on the call, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I thought it was good. What are some of the telltale signs that you are on the way to burnout? And again, it's a two-part question, so I'm going to ask you that bit first.
Well, again, we're all different, but certainly for me, I remember very distinctly my sleep patterns were very erratic. I didn't get very good sleep. I went to sleep on wine and I kept awake on coffee. Not a very sustainable or healthy way of being, for sure. My breathing became erratic. So I used to gulp in air as if I was a goldfish. And I'm sure other people would have noticed that, but no one ever commented on it. But it really became very pronounced towards the end. I couldn't concentrate and think straight, so words on a page would swim around and I couldn't really focus on very much. My hearing, interestingly, deteriorated, but it wasn't my hearing, it was my ability to process what I heard. It just deteriorated. So those are the ones that immediately come to mind, but we are all different. Again, no one size fits all. There's a whole list of these different types of symptoms that you might look out for in the book, because we are not all the same. But those are the ones that came up for me.
Did you recognize those symptoms at the time as being showing that something was wrong?
Because it creeps up on you so insidiously, and I would say my lead time was about 3 years, I would say.
Right. Wow.
I was working very long hours and very stressful and demanding job, and just slowly over time, these things really started to kick in. I certainly recognized the breathing, and I actually spoke to a doctor friend of mine. I didn't go to the doctor. Of course I didn't go to the doctor. Who goes to the doctor? So I spoke to a doctor friend of mine who didn't think anything of it. And in retrospect, I was really surprised now, because if somebody was gulping in this, something can't be right. So I think, yes, that was what I did. It wasn't a good thing.
That kind of almost answers the second part of Stephanie's question, which is, were you somebody who did or did not ask for help?
Yeah, so in the end, I did go to the doctor, but I had collapsed in the office, so I was kind of forced to do so. That's not really asking for help.
No.
So, no, I think if I think back, my belief was, and it probably still is to some extent, I'm embarrassed almost to admit, but I believe it would have been a career limiting move to have mentioned that at work. I didn't have a very supportive boss, and I believe I would have been sidestepped, or I wouldn't have been seen as high potential as I was as I hadn't spoken about it. My husband, I didn't seek help, but we did talk about it, and he could spot the signs more readily than I did. But I just had this belief I just had to keep doing what I did. I didn't think I had any choice in the matter. And of course, it's a completely ridiculous thing, because we're choosing all of the time. We're choosing every single moment of the day. When you're saying no to something, you're saying yes to something else. So I didn't believe I had a choice. So no, I didn't seek help until it was way too late. Way too late.
On that note, Sarah has actually said, and I think it'd be a great Christmas present for somebody, because quite often well, everybody that I spoke to has been in burnout or close to burnout. They don't recognize it in themselves at the time. They don't recognize it till it's, you know, like way too late. So it would be a great Christmas present. And if anybody does want to buy the book, I know you might already have a copy of the book, but for somebody else to kind of pay it forward, then Sarah's going to donate £5 of her book to Mind, which is a great cause. So do feel free to click the link in there, because everybody who buys off that link the donations will go to Mind. We'll let you know how that goes.
And it is interesting that already I've had some great feedback about the book. And as you know, I'm not a great one for promoting myself or this, but I did get a delightful LinkedIn message only last week, saying somebody who had listened to me speak at an event. I spoke at NatWest almost 2 years ago. And she believed that as a consequence of sharing the same content as I share in the book, that she found herself in a place of having more hope and being calm. And she'd wanted to be a mum for some time, and she actually said she believes that she conceived as a consequence of what I shared, which was, and she now has a baby of over a year old, which is very lovely to hear that can have that impact. And I know, Layla, you've got a story too, haven't you, about somebody who's recently read the book?
Yeah, so I'm Sarah's publisher. I'm very familiar with the content of the book and just think it's an amazing life raft for anyone who's having difficulty. But I was at my mother-in-law's for her birthday dinner a few weeks ago, and I was actually sat next to my husband's cousin, a guy called John, who's a senior nurse at one of the London hospitals, who'd actually burnt out during the pandemic. He'd been signed off, and he was talking about what he'd been through, which was really rough. And next to him was my sister-in-law, Chloe, who is a newly qualified midwife. And I asked her how her day had been. And that day she'd had a really traumatic day. I think all of her days are quite traumatic, but she'd had a 17-year-old woman having a very complicated birth. And this woman was actually homeless. And Chloe was trying to find her somewhere safe that she could stay. And everyone on the team was getting really stressed and really panicky. She kept getting all these calls from senior people asking her to do more and more and more and more. And she said if she hadn't have read Sarah's book the night before, she wouldn't have been able to cope. But she actually managed to push back, to kind of maintain her boundaries and give herself some space to actually come up with the solution of how she was going to help this girl. Because sometimes when you're in the kind of the fire, you can't think, you're not doing your best thinking about what could actually work and how you can look after someone, because it's all kind of like just arrows being shot at you from all angles. So I thought that was a great example of someone who literally said that they couldn't have coped with their day if they hadn't read Sarah's book.
Yeah, I think it's
That's very special. Thank you very much.
So much wisdom in there. It's yeah, it can be life-changing. And talking about life-changing, actually, I wanted to talk to you. I know you weren't expecting this, but I want to talk to you about your Lifebeat assessment work.
Oh.
Sarah does this thing called the Lifebeat assessment. So she made me do it a couple of years ago. She came on my I run a retreat, or I did run a retreat before pandemic called the Get Shit Done retreat, and Sarah was on it, and she made me do this Lifebeat assessment, which really shows you how stressed you are, even if you don't think you are. And more importantly, it also shows you, are you getting enough rest and recovery? Because stress is part of life, and everybody will be stressed from time to time, and you can cope with it if you are getting enough rest and recovery within that. So it was quite eye-opening for me. I walking as a consequence of doing this assessment. So just, can you tell us a little bit about that, Sarah?
Yeah, so I know you were talking, or I mentioned the symptoms. Many of the symptoms will be outside of our conscious awareness. But the fantastic thing about a Lifebeat lifestyle assessment is the full title of this thing. It is objective data. It is monitoring how your heart responds over a 3-day period. You typically do 2 working days and 1 recovery day, or weekend day, where it can actually tell you what's going on. So it actually shows you the data behind what's going on in your physiology. How stressed do you get? What triggers the stress? How long are you stressed? how much recovery time do you get in a typical day, or in this case 3-day period. What I love about it is for very bright people, and a lot of my clients are very bright senior people, this is data they can't challenge. It is fact. And it really does show them whether they have this balance in place. Stress isn't the problem, it is the recovery that's often the problem, because there's not enough of it there. So this particular assessment allows you to see firsthand what's going on inside, so you can't dispute it. And what it also shows is that sometimes you can be asleep and still stressed. If you drink late at night would be a good example, where you can actually still be asleep, but actually you're still not getting the recovery because your body's in a stress state. Or if you exercise, the wrong type of exercise at the wrong time of day can also impact your ability to get good quality sleep. So this particular tool I do with a number of my clients, and each one of them, Carol included here, has got enormous amounts of value because they can see it from a different perspective. And the great thing is you can be tested and assessed, if you like, and then if you wanted to, you could come back 6 months later, a year later, and get the assessment done again to see whether your changes of behavior have actually impacted your ability to do the recovery piece, not so much the stress piece. So yes, that's something. And actually Simon, who's on the call, who is also a Firstbeat lifestyle assessor too. And how have you found it working with your clients, Simon?
Well, very similar, Sarah. I've used different tools, psychological, psychometric, and what you're talking about for over 35 years. This is the most impactful that I've ever used, for the reasons that you've just said, that it's based on one's own data and is inarguable. But I think actually what it shines a light on is some of the other things that have been said in the last 30 or 40 minutes. I mean, the fact is that whilst we think we can learn our way into anything and be brilliant at everything, the fact is that we as human beings are the product of thousands of years of genealogical and scientific progress based on the ecosystems that our forebears were in. So we do wake up to a stressful world. And in this particular data, you will see it as red on your charts, minute by minute, hour by hour, and day by day, as Sarah was saying. And we are built to manage stress. What we're talking about in Sarah's book is mainly when that goes into extremis. But the most important element, I think, about what we're talking about with the Firstbeat assessment is the green area, which is the rest and recovery, and the quality of what Sarah said a moment ago, of sleep being the most powerful element of where you get your recovery from. And our belief that that's okay, because I go to bed, and it isn't. Not when you see it, when you see what it is that's actually disturbing that reservoir of rest, which is what you require to be able to do the next day. So whether you're a trainee, a newly qualified midwife, or it doesn't matter who you are, you still need that reservoir, and you need it to be topped up during the day in order just to be able to live your life as well tomorrow as you are being today. Or indeed, if you've been in a bad place, better and better. And resilience is that ability to bounce back and forward, not just back, but forward. What is it that I've learned? What is it about going to bed better hydrated, less boozed up, earlier meal, whatever it is that you've got fixed into your day? And there's no silver bullet. You have to learn these things just like any other thing that we learn as kids. I think it's incredibly powerful. Yeah.
I definitely
Jonathan's got his hand up as well. Carol, sorry.
No, I said I definitely did find that. And you know, you as an entrepreneur, you have this image of that you're invincible, you can just do anything, you can take more and more on, it doesn't matter, I'm not like other people, I can work harder than other people can, I can cope with more than other people can. And that may be true to a small extent with entrepreneurs, but nobody is Superman, and and sometimes you need to see that data to go, oh, perhaps I'm not coping as well as I actually thought I was. It occurs to me, I'm going to put you on the spot here, Sarah. It occurs to me that it would be an amazing gift for the person who's got everything for Christmas, and I know that normally you charge £250 for this. So I'm going to put you on the spot and say it's Black Friday on Friday. What what would you be happy to give one of these for, on the basis that all these people love their relatives and they may want to give one to one of their friends or family? Sorry, I know I'm putting you on the spot there, but
well, if I'd do it for 120, I think. So if somebody wanted that, but they'd need to let me know this week, and it would have to be used before June, something like that.
Okay. So Sarah's email, I think, is already in the chat. So should people just email you directly, Sarah, if they wanted to?
Yes, if they're interested in grabbing that spontaneous offer, please do email me, sarah@sarahsparks.co.uk. And I know Jonathan
somebody had their hand up.
Yeah,
Jonathan.
So I just wanted a couple of things. I think firstly, I thought Allison's point about resilience to change is very interesting, because unfortunately I'm seeing that some of the recruitment stuff I'm being asked to look at. And I've asked the people why resilience to change is so important to them. I've yet to get a good answer, because I think resilience to almost day-to-day attrition is perhaps more helpful. But I was also just thinking about Simon's point and some of what you discussed, which is we're looking here at trying to avoid people burning out. But what happens when they've burnt out, and how can they come back to useful employment? Because there seems to be quite a mistrust on the part of employers for people who cross that bridge, if we want to call it that. And I think also for the individuals themselves to reframe how they are is often extremely difficult. I just wonder what you might sort of think around that, Sarah.
In terms of the employers taking people back that have had burnout in particular, and how an individual could reframe it. Jonathan, I'm going to be provocative here, because I don't know about you. I don't know many people who want to go back to that same.
Well, yes, I think that would be fair. Yes.
Quite a few smiles on the screen there. I mean, and why would we? I mean, one of the reasons that we burnt out is because they're not mentally healthy places to be. Some of them are toxic ones on top of that as well. So yes, I guess if needs must, and you wanted to find yourself back in that environment, I think my personal opinion would be choose your company wisely, because some of them are much more receptive to creating a mentally healthy place to work than others, and ones where you can be open and honest about your situation. I think it's really, really important for your recovery, but also for their ability to get the best out of you and to create an environment that you can do that. But recovery takes a long time. Would you not agree? It took me 5 years to recover.
Yeah.
And even now I know that if I get tired, I get very close to on the downward spiral. So I need to be very careful about that. But so you do need to find yourself an environment where you can continue to get better. So having a very good and clear contract with your manager about your situation, which takes a huge amount of trust. And unfortunately, the statistics show that if you do declare your mental ill health, the chances of you being made redundant or put to one side are still very high compared with the norm. So it is a challenging place to be. But I'm open to what do you think, Jonathan? I know you've got some strong ideas.
Okay, so firstly, I think the 5 years, when I get there, I'll let you know if that works, Sarah. I mean, my take is that it's very difficult in today's world in these type of situations to get a decent return to work program agreed. And my sense of we both work in financial services is that we're seeing a lot of people who hit that boundary, cross that bridge, call it what you will, effectively moving out. So it for me makes it more important than ever that we don't let people get that far. And you've talked about kindness, and I think for me, compassion in the workplace is really important. And I think we've got to do more to help people avoid getting to that point, because I do sense that very few of those people ever come back. And as you say, I think the employers are suspicious. And I was on a round table last week and trying to persuade people on this very subject to be more thoughtful. But the testosterone around the table left me quite perplexed. I would say probably half the people at the table will find themselves needing your book at the very least, Sarah. But it just seems to me it's that ability to recover and to be supported through that employers may well need to think about more, particularly when you quote the statistics that you quoted earlier.
I think that's a really important point, and I think employers are going to have to incorporate this, because one thing the pandemic has done is made people reassess, you know, a little bit where they are working. Do they want to go back to that environment? And employers are going to have to be more flexible, more holistic in their approach in order to attract the best talent and keep it. I think that's my opinion, having 20 years in recruitment before running a social media company.
Yes, and it's frustrating, isn't it, that mental health is not on the same level as physical health, because if we had a heart attack or a broken leg or, you know, something else physical, then that accommodation would be made. So I think it is time that employers look differently, but we do know it's like a large tanker, slow. It's going to take quite some time to turn.
One of the positive elements I feel about this last couple of years is that I think individuals are much more aware of, as you were just saying, all of you, about what's worked for them, and that has to translate into what works for them in terms of the type of working life they want. And my sense is that there's some growing up going on in the broadest sense of the HR tribe, and also those in management positions who think that steamrolling like they used to was successful then, but it isn't quite going to be quite, or is already not quite so successful now. So I think there's some adjusting. As Sarah's just said, it is like an oil tanker. It's going to take a long time for that shift to happen, but I sense it's happening, because I think the psychological contract that's going on between the employee and the employer, whomever they are, it's a new thing that wasn't there in 2019 and before.
That's true. Guys, I'm going to wrap it up shortly, but one final question for Sarah is, what could someone do in the next 7 days to make, or to start at least, to make a difference to their own stress levels?
I think I'm going to go back to the place where I was speaking to Romola about, you know, how do anything and everything that is going to reduce this idea of being threatened, a physiological threat. So that would be, you know, anything you can possibly think of. So whether it's extending a deadline or renegotiating your workload, or you know, postponing that tricky conversation with somebody unless you absolutely have to. Do you need to do it? Or, you know, just anything you can do to reduce threats would be one place that I would get you to think. You start becoming really conscious and aware. You know, how can I bring down my stress hormones? So reducing the threat wherever you can would be one place to start. And then it would be, you know, focusing on your personal resilience. Focus on sleep. I'm sorry, it's a simple thing. It's not always easy to do, but absolutely, you know, make sure that you focus on getting yourself in a better place, and sleep would be the number one thing there. Moments of quiet, whether it's meditation or just breathing at some point, taking breaks through the day would be another thing to do to try and bring yourself back on track. And then start thinking about, okay, what's my relationship to time? Do I always feel under pressure? How could I change how I feel about time? With having a morning routine and working out, okay, what's really important? What do I need to do today? Be a good first point of call. I think that would, for me, that seems to make a significant difference to people when they feel on the front foot when it comes to managing their time, rather than on the back foot, continuously running to keep up. So that would be the next thing. And then choosing your company wisely. Effectively, we've covered a lot of this already in in the call, haven't we? So yeah, reduce the threats, look after number one, start thinking about how you're going to manage your time differently, and then choose some really good company and maybe some music to go along with it as well. So I mean, 7 days, that would be where I would start. It's a lot to do. Buy the book.
Read the book.
Right, read the book, do the exercises. It's not a spectator sport, this stuff. And the beautiful Maya Angelou quote comes to mind: nothing is going to work unless you do. And that's
so
bottom
true.
line, really.
That's so true.
So be kind to number one. Put you on the top of the pile. Other people don't need to know. Just do it anyway. Just do it anyway.
Sarah, thanks everybody. If you have any more questions for Sarah, just drop her an email over to sarah@sarahsparks.co.uk. And if you haven't already left a review on Amazon for the book, please go and do that, because I don't know about you, but I read them when I'm looking at buying a book. I definitely read them, so it will help. If you can leave a review, that'd be great. And thanks for coming along today.
Thank you, Carol, for hosting, and thank you everybody for coming along and joining me. I really appreciate it. The book has been a success because of you guys, so thank you so much, everybody.
Congratulations.
Bye now.
Bye, everyone.
Yay.